A few days ago, I was talking to my friend about Wuthering Waves, and he told me the following. Gacha viewers don't care about the story. They see characters, they want porn. After that, I turned to him and said, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm GHP, and today we're answering a simple question. Do stories actually matter in gacha games? When people ask, do stories matter? They usually don't even define what they're actually talking about. Are we talking about sales, player retention, or just overall enjoyment? Because those are three completely different things. And today, I'm going to break down all three so we can actually answer this question instead of just throwing opinions around. Let's start with player retention, because this is where story matters the most. Even a basic story already gives players a reason to come back. It gives purpose to what you're doing. Instead of just logging in, doing dailies and logging out, you now have something to actually care about. And the thing is, it doesn't even need to be amazing. It just needs to be engaging enough to make players curious about what happens next. But when the story is actually good, then it becomes a real hook. That's when players don't just log in to do some daily missions, that's when they log in because they want to see what happens next. And yeah, I think I'm the perfect example of that. The main reason I keep playing Wuthering Waves, or even Nikke, is the story. If those games had no narrative, I would have already dropped them a long time ago. Because at some point, gameplay loops alone aren't enough, or in case of Nikke, they're good. Story is what keeps the experience feeling fresh over time. Now, let's talk about sales. And this is exactly why I started with retention. Because if players aren't sticking around, they're not even spending money. Simple as that. But the story also affects sales in a more direct way, through characters. In gacha games, you're not just selling gameplay units, you're selling personalities, backstories, and emotional connections. Like me and my wife, you know. Yes, that's actually in the script. A well-written character isn't just strong or meta, they're someone players care about, and when that happens, they're way more likely to pull for them. That's why some characters sell insanely well, even if they're not the strongest in the game. And the biggest example of this right now is Sigrica, who so far isn't pulling that many numbers, despite being one of the strongest characters in the meta. And then we have Ahmed, who is a strong meta character, but also very relevant to the story. Of course, that's not the only reason she sold well, but it's a very significant one. Because remember, people aren't just rolling for power, they're rolling for a personality. And without story, characters become replaceable. They become just a new shiny toy. And if characters are replaceable, players stop caring. And if players stop caring, well, your revenue starts to drop. Now let's talk about game enjoyment. And this one depends more on the person. Some players genuinely don't care about the story, and that's totally fine. They play the game mostly for combat, progression, or even just collecting characters. And for them, story is just something they usually skip. But even then, the story still helps shape the world they're playing in, and that enhances the overall experience. It gives a meaning to the world, the enemies, and the characters you're using. Without story, everything starts to feel disconnected and empty, like you're almost playing a game as a job. And that was exactly what happened to me with Dark Knight's Enfield. But we can talk about that on another video. However, for players who do care about the story like myself, it's not just a bonus or something that adds personality. It's a core part of the game. It's what turns a good game into a memorable one. Now, to be fair, gacha stories aren't perfect. And this is where my friend's argument probably comes from. Because a lot of gachas struggle with slow pacing, unnecessary dialogue, filler content, inconsistent writing, or even over-influence from the gacha system in the story. Sometimes stories are stretched out just to keep players logging in, or they use the story just as pure advertisement to the next character. And yeah, when that happens, players stop caring, they start skipping everything altogether. They treat a game like a checklist instead of an experience. But here's the true takeaway. That's not proof that story doesn't matter. That's proof that a bad story doesn't work. Because when a gacha game actually gets it right, players talk about it, they notice, they share it, and they come back for it. So the issue isn't story versus no story. It's good story versus bad/not engaging story. So, do stories matter in gacha games? They do, and not just in one way. They matter for player retention, arguably the most important factor. They matter for sales, through character attachment, and they matter for enjoyment, depending on the player. Are they everything though? No. Gameplay still matters, character design still matter, but the story is what ties everything together. It's what gives players a reason to stay, instead of just trying the game and leaving. So, next time someone says gacha players don't care about story, just remember they only say that because they haven't experienced one that resonated with them. Anyway, that's it for today. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this. Please consider joining our Discord, we are daily active, and yeah, see you on the next one.